I, James Alexander Malcolm Mackenzie Fraser, do hereby declare that this is my last will and testament, and so swear before God. I leave to my wife, Claire Elizabeth Beecham Fraser, all property and goods of which I die possessed, absolutely, with the exception of certain individual bequests as listed here beneath. To my daughter, Brianna Ellen Fraser Mackenzie, I leave 200 acres of land from the land granted me from the land grant known as Fraser's Ridge. To my son, Fergus Claudel Fraser, and his wife, Marcely Jane McKimmey Fraser, I leave the sum of 500 pounds in gold. To my natural son, William James Fraser, known also as William Clarence Henry George Ransom, known also as the 9th Earl of Ellesmere, 100 pounds in gold, the 3 casks of whiskey marked with JFS, and my green Bible. May he find succor and wisdom in its pages. To my grandchildren, Jem, Mandy, Davy, Germaine, Joni, Felicite, Alexandre, and Charles Clare, and any further issue of my children, I leave 10 pounds each to them. Lo, children are a heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. As arrows are in the hand of a mighty man, so are the children of the youth. Happy is the man that hath his quiver full of them. Welcome, friends, to the recap and review of the Outlander season finale, and the world was all around us. Buckle up, Sassenachs. All right, friends, I hope you will indulge me the bit of theater at the beginning there of reading James Fraser's last will and testament as it appears in the book. And we're here. We made it. And I have a whole roll of Kleenex tissue right here for me, and I'm sure my makeup won't make it through. But I'm going to do my darndest, okay? I'm going to do my damnedest to get through this. Man, I have so many feelings, but just a few things before I get into the recap, as I always do. I know. I will say this wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I know that may seem a pittance to offer a show that means so much to me, but truly, I feel a little bit in shock. I feel a little bit bereft in how to fully articulate what I'm feeling about this show as a whole, and then comparing that with what we got in this last episode and what it did and what I feel like it was trying to express. And those things can be separate and equally powerful. And yeah, I don't know. We'll walk through it. But as I always do, I will start with a recap and, recitation of events. We just try to faithfully bear witness here. So I will do that recap. And then, of course, I'll have a bit of comparison. But mostly I want to spend then kind of the end talking about my impressions of this final season, where I think things still could go or will go if we do get some form of a 10th season in whatever form, whether that's movie or show or whatever. I will say my opinions on that. And then, yeah, I don't know where I'll go. Honestly, I never plan these out besides writing down the notes when I watch it. But thank you for being in this journey with me. Thank you all of you who've joined me, whether it's been for the last 4 episodes and you're catching up to me, or you've been with me since the very beginning. I appreciate you so much. And thank you for all your encouragement, your thoughts, debate, discussion. Pretty much anyone who wasn't outright rude, I'm happy you were here. And even those of you who were rude, you still gave engagement to the channel. So thanks for it. And I'm just so blessed by you all. So without further ado, let's get into this recap. Okay? So the first couple things to mention, right, as we get into this recap is that it was not 120 minutes, as some people were saying. I don't know where I fully got that info. It was from one of the other podcasts that they'd gotten that tidbit or they'd heard so. But immediately I saw that the running length was 71 minutes, which is not an hour and a half. It's not 2 hours. It's an hour and 10 minutes. Okay. Yeah, about 20 minutes more than some of what we got during this season, but really what it felt like it did, and I'll mention that at points throughout this recap, is that it allowed them maybe to linger longer on certain scenes. But in general, I feel like the content of this episode still would have fit in like a 30-minute episode. We just took an extra long time breathing at each moment, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. It was a good thing. We needed points to breathe, okay? I was taking sips of my Sassenach whiskey all through. But it was... What I mean by that is they didn't try to wrap up every little thing. They just let this last episode breathe. And I don't know how I feel about that yet. I think I mostly feel okay, but let's keep going. So we start with a very brief intro before the intro, cold open of the stars in the sky, which we very quickly see some embers flying through them. And it does remind me of, was it in season 7 that Claire and Jamie were staring up at the sky talking about space and time? I think it was season 7. I can't quite remember, but I know it was another time when they did that as well. And it turns out it's the fiery cross that is sending embers in, and Jamie has called all of his people together, and they're shouting lots of Gallic phrases, I'm sure, that are about war and battle. And it was inspiring us to go onward. And then we had our intro. And I'm not going to break down into a puddle this early, but there was a few other people I'd seen say this, though I hadn't even really thought about it until about 2 episodes ago, that it was something I would want. And of course it made absolute sense. They played... I'm sorry, guys. You know what you're here for today. And if you're not grieving some of this with me, I don't want to hear it. Okay? I don't want to hear it. I'm gonna cry through this. Okay? They played the original Skyboat song with the original pictures from what I saw. I think there was 1 or 2 that were maybe different, but in general, it was the original intro with all the original pictures too, which was beautiful to see. Of course, it still had new names in it and everything, but it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And then our teaser card was Craig Nadoon with the flowers at the base of the stone, which, of course, will come back later on. But thankfully, not how I was afraid that it would. I'm just putting that out there now. This whole episode, I was holding my breath for what crazy shit they were going to do. And it really felt like they pulled back on a lot of things. And again, I'm not mad about that, but I feel a bit deceived at the same time. So we'll get there. All right, then we go to Jamie reading his will, which, as I, again, a bit theatrically did in the beginning, I read the original mostly. I left out because it's a chapter that's in his POV, so I pieced together the parts of the will to read it kind of like this. But to go over the will that was said in the show, because of course there has to be some edits, because someone is dead, and a few other things are different. But he leaves the same, all of his goods and property to Claire, except the items listed beneath, which he put 2,000 acres to Brianna on Fraser's Ridge, Jeremiah and all of his grandchildren, which he lists, which includes Franny, but doesn't include... Well, I think the way that he does it is he is including the ones on the ridge, that he leaves that to. But whatever. And then there is all of his books, which he'll leave to Roger to distribute among them, he said. Then to Janet, which is Jenny, he leaves their mother's stag brooch. Oh, very beautiful. To Ian, he leaves his tools and weapons. To Marcelie, he leaves his quills and ink and stationery. To William, he leaves three casks of whiskey and his Bible. And in the recitation of this will, as he names those people, we see a clip of them, except for, it just could be a random clip. So I will say this was, I think, something that deceived a lot of us. So I'm just putting it in right here. And I don't mean that badly. In the last video, which you could go back and check, and I didn't comment on everybody's because I wasn't interested in like shooting down people at that point. But a lot of people thought William was going to show up at this battle, or Lord John was going to show up at this battle. They were sure that it was going to be his son who died instead. Like, there was just a lot of, and by a lot, I mean 3 or 4 people who were sure. Now, I had guessed to myself that Willie was going to show up at least. Like, I thought he might show up. And in the last trailer, they had a scene of Willie, that scene that is shown when Jamie reads his name, of him riding a horse. He isn't riding that horse anywhere particular in the episode. It's literally just a clip of him, as it is when he reads everyone. So that was the first thing where I was like, oh wow, this is all we're going to see in this episode of these people he's listing. Most of them anyway, is a clip of them while he's reading this. Biting my tongue, because we're doing the recap first. Like I said, so much stuff is just left open-ended in a frustrating degree, is what I'm saying. It's a frustration thing. But anyway, he lists that off, and it's mostly the same. Then we have sunrise on the ridge, and Jamie is in bed with Claire. Now, there was a lot of dialogue here, and I just couldn't help myself from writing a lot of it down because I felt like so much of it was foretelling what was going to happen, was making comments on things like that. And so I couldn't help myself from writing a lot of it down. So I'll just read through some of the stuff that I wrote, because a lot of it is imagery of what we'll see in the very end of this episode. So they're alone in the morning together, and he says the sun is rising, and Claire says something about, and it will set just like it does every day. And he asks her to tell him about the bees. Don't think about the goodbyes that are coming. Tell me about the bees. And she says she saw bees sleeping in a flower. Maybe they couldn't make their way back to the hive in time for night, and so they were holding each other's feet in a flower. And she thought they were dead, but really they were just kind of like pseudo hibernating or something. Jamie says, don't you wish for a quieter life, only with you and the bees? And Claire says, I don't only want the bees. No, I don't think the quiet life was ever meant for us. And Jamie says, I lived longer than I thought I would, though, and my grandchildren are my greatest joy, which, again, is kind of why I read what he says in the book as his last will and testament, because, again, sorry to poke this in there. Again, I was just reading the pieces of his will, but there's his commentary as he's doing it, which I'll come back to later when we do a comparison. But he says, like, he gets such joy out of writing down the list of all of his offspring, both adopted and natural. Like, he sees them all as his greatest accomplishment is his children. And I can't help but think, and this is such a weird thing that just popped in my head, I didn't even write this down. I'm sorry to mention this, but it makes me think of Frank in a way. Sorry, but I'll tell you why. Because one of the things Frank wanted so much was to have a genealogy. He wanted to have a genealogy. And he doesn't. And the only genealogy he does have is because of James Fraser. Like his future one, right? And he is a little bit a part of it in a way. And he even will acknowledge that when he talks to Bree, is that your father raised you. And I don't know, that just literally came into my mind as this bittersweet thing. And we can feel whatever we want to feel about Frank, but he really wanted to have kids. And his jealousy and disappointment in some aspects of how it turned out, he still ended up with Brianna, and he loves her so much. And it's because of Jamie Fraser. But anyway, Frank Randall never got this, and his name isn't even mentioned in the will either, even as where his name might fit in Brianna or Claire's names. He's completely left out of it. So just the irony of this historian that just popped in my head. But Jamie's greatest joy is his family, and I think it's beautiful. And Jamie goes on to say, again, I wrote a lot of this down because it is important for what we'll see at the end of the episode. He said, if I make it to heaven, there must be a, this is my word, contingency for checking in on those that you love. Being a ghost would be quite interesting. There are a few folk I wouldn't mind calling in on in that state, if only to see their faces. And Claire said, would you look in on me? And Jamie says, I wouldn't want to frighten you. I think he says, you're a wee lass, I wouldn't want to frighten you. But I missed the beginning part of his comment. But he does say, I wouldn't want to frighten you. So then she talks about her parents and wonders if they'd ever checked in on her. She mentions how she traveled so much with her Uncle Lamb, and she never had a home. And then, and this is really beautiful, it is, though it made my heart absolutely aching, was her remembering the vase that she saw in the window when she was in Scotland with Frank, and how she wished she had a mantle to put it on. And Jamie asked, did you ever buy it? And she said no, because the very next day I went to Craignatoon looking for some flowers. And Jamie says, do you ever wish you hadn't went? And she says, I've never wished otherwise. And then she asked him, have you ever wished otherwise? And he said, she said, I had everything I ever wanted. And she asked him that, and he says, no. He says, I should like to sleep in a flower with you. All right. Now we switch scenes finally. And we have Brianna and Roger standing by a tree, looking out where they're going to build their home there, because they still haven't had a chance to build their own yet. Roger looks very sharp in his minister's garb. And, you know, Bree tells him he has to come home to her. And he says he always does. And she asks him to bring her father back to him. Now we're in the house, and Claire and Fanny talk to one another. And Fanny says that you lied to me, you're leaving. You said that you would always be here. And Claire said, we must do this. And she says, and Fanny wants to come with. And she says, no, you've been learning so much. Or Fanny says something about, like, I've been learning so much, I'm such a good help. And Claire says, that's why you have to stay. You have to look after everyone. And Claire says, I can't promise that we're going to come back, but this is your home. They're your family. She lists everyone. And she says, we have something that connects us all right in here, and you're never alone. Then we have Jamie and Bree, and he gives her back the book. And Frank's book, and he says, Frank gave me more than just this book. He raised you, and it was all worth it. And he says that you look like your mother, and she says, no one ever says I look like my mother. And he says, it's not your eyes or your hair. You look like your mother in love. Whenever I see you with Roger Mack or with the children. And so Bree says, guys, this is so hard for me. Bree and Jamie's relationship is one of my favorite things. And it's just almost unbearable. Even when it's in the way the show is doing it, it's just almost unbearable. So, Bree says to him, well, you don't need me to tell you I love you, because you'll see it in my eyes. But I do love you, Da. And he says, I love you, Lass. So then we have some more quick moments. We have Ian and Rachel walking, and Rachel is walking him towards the meeting place, and then they stop and kiss and say goodbye. Then we have Claire and Bree hugging, and then we have Jamie talking to the bees. And he tells the bees goodbye, and he asks that if Claire comes to tell you I'm gone, I'm trusting you with her. He says some poetry to them. And then when we pull back and he walks away, we see that all the men were waiting at the top. And then we have them all riding out, and we see everyone. We see Buck and Aaron Whitaker and Roger and Ian, the Beardsleys. All of them are together. And this is when I wrote down that we were 26 minutes in and they were all goodbyes that we were showing. So there's this dread that the episode is building that is just so intense in the pit of your stomach, because again, this is a 71-minute episode and we spent 26 of those minutes just on all these goodbyes. Now, again, I don't think that's wrong, because it's not goodbyes of whether or not Jamie is going to die in this. This is our last episode. So these goodbyes we're getting goodbyes with, of course, there's some that we didn't get that we wish we had, but they're giving us those moments. And of course, the longest one has to be Jamie and Claire. That time with them in their bedroom just doesn't feel rushed. It feels so intimate and it covers so much. And it's an example of scenes in the books where that happens all the time. We get those quiet moments with them before the day or at the end of the day or after a big event when they're recentering themselves together, which is their most important relationship, the most intense part, and it's beautiful. But then we're riding out. We meet up with Cleveland's men, and and then we cut to they arrive at Kings Mountain, and we have Jamie and Claire riding out, and Jamie's wondering if he'll ever see the ridge again. He wishes he was back on the ridge, and she says, you will see it again. Then he speaks with Cleveland, and we find out a few more details that Ferguson's men are about a day's ride away. He'll be on a white stallion. He's wearing red. There are 1,000 of Ferguson's men, and there's 900 Patriots. And we hear that from Frank's VO. He explains that they will think they're getting the high ground on Kings Mountain, but the rebel forces will be able to come at them from all sides, and they will be overwhelmed. So Frank has assured him that the Patriots win. That has never really been a question throughout this whole season that we've been reading Frank's book. It isn't Frank saying this will be a devastation. It's saying that Jamie won't live through it. So hearing all these pieces come into place, as reassuring as it might seem that these things Frank said are true, that the Patriots will win, it's a reminder that Jamie will die, or he believes he will, because Frank isn't lying to him. He is confirming each piece for him as they go. So now we have Jamie and Claire at a river, and I want to make of note, not only because it ended up being good that I made a note for later on when something else happens, but Jamie is wearing the Fraser kilt. He looks stunning in his battle gear. He always does. And he's talking with Claire a moment by the river, and he starts talking about Mandy, and we start fitting in some important pieces. He says that Mandy can hear animals and a few people, and she can feel me, he said. And Claire says, well, what do you mean? And he says, you're each a color, but I am a different color than everyone else. And of course, Claire asks this question. And she says, I'm the color of water. Not blue or green, the color of water. And it's a very interesting. And then Jamie asks, if I die, will you do 3 things for me? And Claire says, of course I will. And he says, number 1, have a mass for me, and find a priest. And however long it takes, please do that. And Claire says, well, of course, but I think the closest priest is in Maine, so it might take a while. Because of course, Roger is a Presbyterian minister. He's not a priest. Catholics aren't allowed in this area, really. But he says, that's fine. I'll wait in purgatory. I'm sure it'll be okay. Number 2, he says that Davy is the same color as him. And he wonders if that means that Davy can't travel. So if Jamie should die, they should give Davy to Ian and Rachel. They will love him with their whole hearts, and the rest of them should go home. All right. And Claire says, I love you with my whole heart, and I can't save you. And Bree would never leave her baby. No matter what happens to you, this is my home, and we won't be leaving. We'll put a little pin in that there. And she says, I'm sorry, I won't go. But what was the 3rd thing? And he just simply says, remember me. And then they kiss. And then there's a final love scene, which, I mean, yeah, I love them. Goodbye sex is certainly a kind of it. They're really beautiful together, and I love them so much. Anyway, okay. After that, Claire is just staring at him and memorizing his face. So, then it is sunrise, and it's time for battle. And Jamie brings a cross for Roger to wear, saying that this will keep you from being shot when you're on the front lines, blessing people. And Claire's supposed to stay with the camp, and she can come through afterwards to help the wounded. And Claire's like, sure, honey, I'll do that. No, she doesn't say that, but that's me saying, sure, honey. That's what she's going to do. All right. Then it's time for a speech. Jamie gives a really great one. The only line I wrote down was, let our hearts be ablaze to fight for our families and for freedom, is what I wrote down. Though, of course, there's a bit more. Then all the men head out, and Jamie lingers behind for a moment, asks Roger to pray for him, and says, Roger does do a blessing over the battle as well. It's a very quick one. But then he asks Roger to pray for him and says, look after her, Roger Mac, and pray for me. And then he gives Claire one more kiss before goodbye. And then Roger and Claire wait together, which I won't lie, it's beautiful to have a little scene of them together. All right. And now the battle will begin, and there's only 28 minutes of the episode left. So we literally used 2/3 of the episode just to get to the battle, which I'll tell you how long the battle lasted in just a moment. But there we go. So it's a fight to the top. We can hear the whistle that Ferguson is blowing to try to help keep his men organized, but they are fighting their way up the mountain. And back at camp, Claire isn't sitting around. She packs up her healer's bag and she's starting. Because if Jamie believes he's going to die up there, this is my commentary, not the show's. If Jamie believes he's going to die up there, Claire is like, no, sir, that ain't happening. Dr. Claire is on the way. So then we have a quick cutaway scene to the ridge. And we see Brianna, Rachel, Lizzie, they're shucking corn, talking about, okay, the battle must have begun. The women are all waiting at home, and Fanny is listening. And then she comes out and she says, Claire said, we hold them all in our hearts, so we must stay strong for them. And you know what? That's a great line, Fanny. Like, it really is. This actress, for all the shit that they've asked this sweet little girl to do, she's done a good job. And I she's had to be whiny and cry pretty much the whole way through. And I'm not saying you wouldn't be emotional when your sister had killed herself. I understand. We just never got to see her do any really of the other things that she does. So some of the stuff when Cunningham's mom was still there, we never got to see her do some of the great stuff she does. She's just there to remind us of faith and cry all the time. And so it was nice to see her do something where she was like, we hold them in our hearts or they might not come home, and we will. And I was like, yeah, that's right. So gotta give her a moment as well. All right. Then we're back at the battle, and we have more Frank VO where he's explaining about the whistle. And so Jamie is, we see him thinking about, okay, we got to take this guy down. They finally have a Highland charge now. And Jamie says, be your own officer. You don't need me to tell you anymore. Go for it. We see Claire and Roger working their way up the hill, doing a little bit of battlefield nursing. We see Jamie and Ian and Buck going back and forth, stopping blows for each other. They're kind of watching each other's backs. Then again, we see Claire making her way up, and she sees a man fall who looks just like Jamie. I will say, as he was falling, I was seeing Claire being like, oh, and I was like, he doesn't have a kilt on. It's not him. Which I know Claire wouldn't notice in the moment, but like I said, I'd made a note that Jamie wore his kilt into battle. And so when this guy fell, again, I know it wasn't supposed to be him. It's not supposed to look, but I was like, oh, he doesn't have a kilt on. So I didn't have a jump scare at all. Because, again, going through this, I know Jamie's going to fall at some point in this. And when I get to the book, you'll understand why. I had no idea when it was going to be, where it was going to be. Because in the book, of course, it's quite different how it happens. But I was writing Claire's being very foolish doing this. But, again, this is a very book-accurate Claire. This isn't, speculation for the show. This is exactly what Claire Fraser does, is thrust herself in. She thrusts herself into these situations. So very, very book accurate of her to be doing that. All right. Then all of a sudden, Jamie has Ferguson in his sights. They take down all the main men, and the men start surrendering. Claire's following. She almost gets shot right before the surrender happens. And she almost seems to have some of her PTSD flashbacks, though they don't really do a flashback to show that. You just have to kind of tell, right? Not only flashbacks from when she was a World War II nurse, but also this woman was shot and almost died in a scenario just like this. Where when she was shot there, she wasn't necessarily in a spot she shouldn't be. It was like a stray bullet. But in this case, she's literally running through, not being that careful. So definitely fair. But there's a retreat. And the battle was over in 9 minutes. Okay? So as I said, we used 2/3 of this episode getting to the battle, and then the battle was 9 minutes. Now, this is book accurate. Okay, before, I know we're not at the comparison yet, but it is pretty accurate how fast it was. That was kind of the whole point, is this was almost a non-issue of a fight, except that James Fraser dies at this battle. So, again, all this stuff is pretty book accurate. We spent an entire book building up to King's Mountain, so it's not wrong to do it this way. But it leaves you with anxiety, because even as the retreat has happened, they are rounding up the men, you don't feel settled at all. And as Jamie is, just being chill here, we're like, is Frank wrong? Claire actually hugs Jamie. Or no, she hasn't hugged him yet, or does, and Ferguson comes charging at him, and Jamie actually knocks or breaks his sword with his sword, and Ferguson falls off, and you're like, oh my gosh, was Frank wrong? Did we usurp it? Has it happened? Was Claire being there and yelling a warning enough to change this? You're thinking all of these things. But when she hugs him, and then she says, okay, you're okay, It's over. We lived. I thought, Jamie looked gray. So I was like, does he have an injury we can't see? Did something go in through an armpit? Is he not feeling, like, I was thinking all of those things. Cause I'm like, but I knew that this was a shot in the heart. Like, I knew what I was looking for. So I'm like, okay, what's happening, right? But Claire's like, okay, you're okay? I need to get back to the field hospital, but you're okay. And Jamie's like, okay. But I literally was like, he looks gray. And I'm like, where are you injured? And I'm like, she has to tend to the wounded. So she starts to go back down the hill or the mountain, and they're all celebrating. And then Ferguson, who is not had his weapons removed from him and is kind of laying down on a rock where they've like shoved him. Jamie asks Ferguson for his surrender, and Ferguson says, I will never surrender. And he shoots Jamie at point blank range in the heart. Of course, all the men then shoot the guy. Didn't take his weapons from him though. And Jamie feels it. Claire feels it. She feels it in her heart. And Claire comes back, and we hear the buzzing. We hear a buzzing noise a bit too. And as she gets to his side, he has coughed up some blood, and he says, I'm not afraid. And Claire says, I'm not just going to sit here and watch you die. And Jamie says, forgive me, Sassenach. And then all of the men kneel. And for all that Claire says, I'm not just going to sit here and watch you die, that appears to be what she does. Okay? That appears to be what she does. All right? So, up to this point, actually, this has been a fairly faithful recitation. Okay? And now we're going off the fucking deep end here. Okay? We're going off the fucking deep end. But we're in the last 15 minutes, and things take a turn that mostly felt like a journey, so we could have a recap of everything we lived through. And though that is beautiful in a lot of ways, it's extremely frustrating, especially because of how it makes a lot of things that they've done this season to build up to this point feel pointless, okay? But I'm going to continue with my recitation. Okay, we're going to get through it and let this sit in the beauty of what was happening and the pain of what was happening, and then we'll get to the comparison part. But I was freaking out because when all the men kneeled and Claire said, I'm not going to sit and watch you die, he says, forgive me, Sassenach. All the men kneel, and then we pull back and it fades to black. And I was like, what the ever-loving fuck is going on? Okay? No medical care starts. She's just like, no, he can't be gone. And she doesn't do anything. No blue lights happening. Yes, she lost her medical kit a ways ago, but there's no, like, nothing. She just is in shock. Which, again, fair, but, like, what? What? Okay, we keep going. We pull away and fade to black. And when we come back in, it's just Ian and Roger there looking at her. And Ian says, he's gone, Auntie. And Claire says, no. Then Roger tries. And Claire just says, he just needs to rest. He just needs to rest. And they say, he tries to touch her. Roger tries to touch her. And she's like, no. Then we fade to black again. And now it's nighttime. And she's laying with his body. I guess it's supposed to be that metaphor. Like I said, we said this of the bees who couldn't make it back to the hive. They couldn't make it back to their hive. So she's sitting with him and holding his feet while he rests. Okay? That's the imagery it's supposed to be. I'm trying to keep it cool. We're almost there. Then it's the next day. She's crying over his corpse. It's the next day. Roger returns again and says, it's time to bury him. It's time to bring him home. There are some things that need to happen now. And she says, he is home. Okay? And then Roger walks away again. And the Skyboat song starts to play. And I was like, is she not even going to try anything? It's now been 18 hours maybe. I don't know, maybe a full day. And she's laying there with his corpse. Okay? But then the Skyboat song plays, and I wrote this down. It was a dark and stormy night in Scotland, 1945. And Jamie's ghost was watching Claire Beecham Randall through her window. And Frank Randall came walking by. That was me. Okay, there's our ghost. Definitely, they show the full face of the ghost, and it is, current Jamie, though they made him look as young as they could. But they do show, of course, the shot from the original, where it's just his back standing and looking up. But they show him looking at her as well. And then they have Frank come up, and this is when I started crying, okay? I honestly hadn't cried much while I was watching it because I was so anticipatory of what was happening. And I started getting really mad. And I actually wrote down, fuck you guys. Because there are a couple things going on right now that I'll reflect upon. But giving us something that we want to see so badly, but doing it in this way with Jamie's corpse and him supposedly in purgatory right now, I do not like it. I don't like it. And it's like giving me something I want so bad, but they're twisting it in a way that I don't know. This is how I always thought that Jamie would be the ghost there. But in the context of when it's happening, I feel deceived. And that's just really hard for me. Okay, it's just really hard for me. Because this is something that, again, I just love it so much. Like, every person who's read even the first 5 chapters of Outlander, who's only watched the first episode of Outlander, knows what this scene is. And so to put it back in here, which we all fucking knew it would be in here, but to put it back in here in the way they've put it back in here is painful for me. Okay? But anyway, we get to see Tobias Menzies, and that's when I cried. Because he started this journey with us, and I love that we got to see him. And I know that it was reusing a scene because I heard what everyone said. That we could only have Frank's voiceover because Tobias Menzies is doing other stuff. Like, I get it. Even reusing that scene to have him be in it was like enough for me. I loved it. All right, things are going to keep devolving this way. So if you don't want the fangirl tears, I don't know what you're doing here because I'm barely holding it together. Because then we show Jamie walking across cobblestones and he ends up on grass. And he goes to the stones and he walks through Craignatoon. And he goes up to the stone that Claire, he's watched her go through before, that he knows what it does, and he touches it. And as he walks away, smiling, the flowers that Claire finds that bring her to him sprout at the bottom of the stone. And that was beautiful. So now he goes down memory lane and we see their first meeting and we see their wedding night and we see her telling him she's having a baby. And of course we get this beautiful montage, which I knew we would get one of those as well. And we hear Claire's voiceover where she says, "I'd do it all again and more to be with you." And we go through all of it. And then we return to the mountain and Claire has fallen asleep with him. But now her hair is white. Her hair is pure white now. And it's funny because earlier in the episode, there's a few times where I was like, her hair isn't white yet. She added a little bit of white earlier in the season after she healed the baby, but she wasn't fully white. Her hair wasn't fully white. She herself is very white. But then Jamie breathes. And that's the end of the main episode. And then there is a new version of the Skyboat song playing. There also, I wrote, they had the audacity to say thank you to the fans after putting us through that. But he is alive. And that is why I'm like, oh man, it could have been worse. It could have been worse. Because they killed Jamie, which everyone thought they would. Which isn't completely book accurate. We'll get to it. But he breathed. And Claire's hair is white. So we're to assume that she used her power to save him. And he's just been resting. And visiting all of their history together. And then honestly, I didn't peek, I didn't look. I was just going to sit through the credits. I was listening to the song, just processing everything. And then there was an end scene. And I was not expecting that. I really wasn't. I just was like, maybe there'll be like a thank you at the end from Sam and Katrina, like, or something. Like, really, I had no idea. I was just sitting there processing it, holding my empty glass, completely shell-shocked. And then they gave us a little flash forward, and we're at a book signing. And there's a lady walking by carrying a stack of this. And what should happen but Diana Gabaldon should be signing books to people. And sitting beside her is a beat up, weather-worn journal and one of... Sorry, I need my light to come back now that I got all dramatic. Come back. And there is a fan who says, I've seen you bring that journal to a few signings now. What is it? And Diana says, oh, it's just a little bit of inspiration. And that's the end of Outlander. I have to say that I also was screaming to see the stacks of Outlander. And I think I've shared this before. It's been over a year now. It was like 18 months ago that I was gifted this first edition. It has a signed bookplate, but a first edition signed copy of this by one of my patrons. And then one of my other patrons, a lovely lady, she got me this edition of the book club version of Outlander, because you could actually order copies of this to read with your book club, which I thought was the coolest thing, that there was literally special editions meant for book clubs like this. So anyway, these are my two like copies from when it originally came out. But anyway, sorry, a little show and tell, because when that copy showed up, I was like, oh man, and people are still dressed like it was the 90s. It was super cute. Okay, sorry. So they did get me smiling in the end. And that was our last episode. Oh my gosh. So how to do a comparison like this, okay? I want to keep this actually pretty simple for the comparisons, because truly at this point, now we know where they were going with it. It's done. And I want to more talk about the implications for the future, as well as the things they left hanging, like laundry out on the line or something like that. So kind of the like big things for me here were... Yeah, you read me say it in the beginning when I read his last will and testament. Obviously, there are a few changes to that, like Fergus isn't dead, and like Ian and Rachel, I don't think he leaves him his... Does he leave him his tools in it still? Let me look at it. Yeah, he doesn't leave... Oh, he said this. He says he'd forgotten Jenny, Ian, Rachel, and we, Hunter, James, Little Wolf, and Rachel's newborn. He rubbed 2 fingers between his eyes. Perhaps he should think more and finish it later. The trouble was he didn't dare go to King's Mountain without making disposition of his property. So he hadn't added them in there. But then he adds Janet in, and he leaves her his rosary. So a few things in there. But anyway, continuing through... one of the other big changes that I wrote this down. Okay, so this was something that I liked that the book changed. So, or the show changed. but wanted to point that out. When he asks her to do 3 things, he does ask for the priest, which the closest is in Maryland. And then the second thing he says, wee Davy, Amanda said that he's like me. And he says, I've said this before, but I'll say it again, and I mean it. If I'm dead, you should all go back. If it should be that Davy cannot travel, give him to Rachel and Ian, and they'll love him with all our hearts. And Claire said, I will. And that is just something that I think bugged us when we read the book. And I actually like that the show changed it. Okay, that's something I liked, because a lot of us were like, Bree isn't leaving her baby. Like, Claire can say that, but like, she also hasn't spoken with Roger and Bree really, and like, they are staying. Like, also, it might not even be healthy for Bree to travel again due to her heart. Like, there's so many things in the book that the fact Claire says that, I want to believe she's just saying that because she believes she'll save him and he's not dying, and so she's like, fine, I'll agree with you. But that is a comparison in the book that, or to the book, where I'm like, the show made a good change, where Claire is like, Bree isn't leaving her baby, and this is my home, whether you die or not. So, like that change for the show. Brava. Good point. Then, as for the battle, let me find a few notes on that here. Let's see. Yeah, the battle is really fast. So that is accurate as well. But the way that Jamie gets shot, this is something that people will point out here. So the battle goes very quickly, but it is very brutal and it's very bloody. So this is the part where Jamie gets hurt. I'm just going to read a little piece here. I know I've been reading a lot, but I think this is important. So he heard Ferguson's whistle screamed thin and high through the noise. The man was still on his horse, trying to rally his men, though by now it was like rallying fish in a net. They surged to and fro, bayonets still fixed, stabbing the air while firing, but being driven closer in, jostling as they strove to find a target. He coughed again. The smoke was rasping in his chest, and he spat. It was no more than minutes now, and he kent from Randall's book that what would happen to Ferguson. He hadn't time to think more before his sight fixed on the checkered shirt and his finger tightened on the trigger. He took a step sideways, barrel following his target, and something snagged on his foot. He kicked at the clinging shrub, impatient, and a thorn pierced his calf. Ifrant, he jerked and looked down. The large snake that had bitten him was writhing around his leg in panic, and he flung himself away, kicking out of his own panic. And then the first bullet struck his chest. So it's very interesting. It's a snake that stops him and shoots him. He doesn't get shot by Ferguson. And then Claire, as she is climbing up after him, so that is accurate. She is like, I'm not going to be far away. And then she sees someone with Jamie's rifle, which it's not pointed out too much, but he does have a very distinct rifle. And someone says, who the hell are you? And she says, where did you get it? And he says, tell me where you got this fucking thing, or so help me God, I will beat you to death. And the man says, he's dead. He didn't need it no more. And who's dead, she said. And then eventually she's like, this was Jamie's. I need to know where he is. Where's Colonel Fraser, the man you took this from? The boy was crying, but he's dead. And Claire says, he's bloody not. And then she slaps this man who's been injured and hobbles past him, kicking him in the shin and trying to find Jamie. And then she did, and there was a lot of blood. So, when she comes across him, he has been shot, and they say the same lines. He says, don't worry, I'm not afraid, and she says, well, I'm afraid. Do you think I'm just going to sit here and watch you die by inches? And he says, aye. And she says, you can't, Jamie, you can't. And he says, forgive me. And she says, oh, Jesus, Jamie, please don't go. So, she can't speak. She's in deep grief. I think that she is working on him for a while. So I understand the passing of time thing part of it, but having it be that she doesn't even try to save him at all. Like, at all. We don't see any blue light coming off that she's trying to use powers. We don't see her doing anything. She literally is just holding him and rocking, which again, a normal woman would too. They absolutely would. You get shot in the chest. There's nothing you can do. You would sit and hold your husband. And honestly, maybe you would sit there for a long time when it's your deepest love. Maybe you couldn't even imagine, because if you get up and you start carrying him back, it's admitting defeat. I get that. I'm not saying that's inaccurate in that representation, but that is not Claire Fraser. She was prepared for this eventuality, okay? And she is not giving her husband up to that good night, even if it's against his will. Even if he has written a last will and testament and is prepared to accept this fate, Claire Fraser is like, fuck no, sir. You are not getting away from me. You may not leave me ever. We're fighting this. And in fact, here is even one of her quotes here. She says, listen, you think you're going to die by inches, but you're not. You're going to live by inches with me. And this is Ian saying, he's dead. Come stand up. Let me take him. We'll bring him home. And she says, I wouldn't let go. I couldn't speak anymore. I hadn't the strength for it, but I wouldn't let go and I wouldn't move. Ian spoke to me now and then. Other voices came and went. Alarm, concern, anger, helplessness. They didn't listen. But the blue, it's not empty. It's beautiful. So she found 4 different wounds. A ball had went through his thigh and missed a bone and artery. Another had scored his right side below the rib cage, a deep furrow. Another struck him in the left kneecap. Fortunate as to there was minimal bleeding. And then there was a chest wound. Okay? It hadn't penetrated his sternum entirely, or he'd be dead, I thought. But it might have gone through and torn his pericardium, blah, blah, blah. She's going to get all like that. So she's forcing him to breathe. So then Ian showed up, and he had brought things from her pack as she needed them. So he's doing it, and she is going full on, I'm going to save him. And so they're trying to give him medicine. He can't swallow them. Like, he's really not there. And Roger is there and says, you can't die, mate. Presbyterians don't do last rites. Claire says, I couldn't let go. I couldn't move anymore. I hadn't the strength for it, which is literally just a repeat of the voices before. I love it. And so she's listening to his heart. She won't let go of it. She was vaguely aware from time to time of things happening. So again, I think time is passing. Like, it's fair to say she works on him for longer than it should be. His skin was cold beneath it, but she pressed herself hard against him, holding tight to the shape of his back, trying to force myself into the fibers of his muscle. So we see now she is behind him, holding him. So what is she really doing working on his chest wound anymore? So there's even some interpretation for she's not doing normal medical things anymore. But she keeps telling him to breathe, and she's feeling his heart. And then she hears someone say, shouldn't we take her away? And Ian says, leave her. And he sat down beside me. I heard the scruff of dirt beneath his moccasins and the sigh of his buckskin stretching. I drew a quick sobbing breath, deep as I could, pulling air in for both of us. And young Ian rested a hand on my shoulder, not sure what he should do. And there, a solid shape with no form, glowing with a fractured light. Ian was hurt, but not badly. I could feel his strength pulse and fade. So she's now expanding out of herself and feeling Ian and feeling his source. I could feel his strength. I felt a pulse through my flesh, and for an instant, I was disoriented. So she actually had, like, moved. She couldn't find the limits of her own body. She felt Jamie's slow surrender into my belly and veins, and Ian's strong pulse in my heart and arteries. Where am I? I concluded, dimly aware that it didn't matter. Help me, I said silently, and then I yielded to my own boundaries. So it's this very fascinating scene, and I understand that that would all be very hard to show, but I thought that was the whole point of there being kind of this like blue light thing, and that could have been a way, if this had been happening at night, that they're trying to keep him warm, she's trying to keep him breathing, she refuses to give up, he might be cold, but she's literally beating her heart for both of them, her magic is pulsing out, whatever that magic is. Ian comes and touches her, and she's able to tap into his life source in a certain way. So this woman is so far into this, she's not even allowed to make her logical decisions anymore, which is something that, you know, she goes into Beecham mode. She even says that earlier in the scene too. I didn't read it. I'm reading enough from there. I'm sorry. But this is very important to me because what was the point of trickling in these pieces of magic? What was the point of saying that Raymond was able to save Faith hours and hours after she died, right? And again, this is what I mean. It felt like kind of a slap in the face because we don't get to see any of it happen. Like, it's just supposed to be like she fell asleep beside him, her hair went white, and she healed him. I understand the vision of he's in purgatory. He's in the space between and getting to have this journey of remembering and it almost being like, this is what I'm staying for. And Jamie's made that decision before, right? He's made that decision to stay for her before when he was bitten by a snake bite before. Remember that? She almost lost him that night. And he chose to stay for her. And this time she's kind of choosing. So this last little bit where it all flicks over is this chapter called Not Yet. So she says, we stayed there, the four of us, through the rest of the day and the night beyond and most of the next day. So here's that time that we're talking about. Like I said, it's not completely unprecedented because she stayed beside him all this time. And when finally I resumed contact with the world, I was curled beside Jamie, a sheet of canvas flapping in the wind above us. Here, Auntie, young Ian said, his hand slid under my arms. And she says, what about Jamie? And Roger says, he's alive, Claire. He was squatting next to me. I don't know how you did it, but he is alive. We were afraid to move you, the two of you, I mean, because you wouldn't let go of him. So that's the vision, right? Of her having clung to him, poured herself into him, slept by him in the flower. He got the rest that he needed. She poured her life into him, and now he's alive. And so I put a hand on Jamie. He looked dead, but his chest moved under my hand. Do you think it's safe to move him, Auntie? Roger Max found a farmhouse not too far away. Can you hear me? And he opened one dark blue, red-rimmed eye to a slit. Aye, he whispered. The battle's over, and you're not dead. Not yet, he said. We're going home, I said. And then he said, good, and closed his eye. So, she saved him through 3 or 4 of will, her magic, the support of Roger and Jamie, who, again, this isn't my full thought. It isn't even until the most recent time reading these clips that I saw what they were talking about. But it appears to me that she can use people as amplifiers for her healing. It's believed that in the scene when she heals the baby, it's Jamie who's her amplifier. But in this case, when he's the one who needs the help, it's Ian's strength and Roger's strength around them that give her a little extra to pour into him. And then, you know, after this, they go back to the Ridge. And after this is when Lord John has been kidnapped and William shows up. And again, in book 10, we'll find out if they're able to rescue John and if things play out the way they did in the show. So they've just kind of flip-flopped those. And it's obvious why they did, because they were going to have Jamie almost die. And he is significantly weakened after this battle. It is probably the worst he's hurt since like Wentworth. And Wentworth was really, I mean, he was very badly hurt after Wentworth, or after surviving what happened, after Culloden, where Claire isn't there for that healing time. But he's a lot older now, and he doesn't bounce back the same. And the shatter to his knee is a big blow. So all of those things very much affect him going forward, but he lives. And he lives because of Claire's magic, and their connection and whatever else is going on out there. And so that is kind of the biggest thing to me, that for all that we danced around the fact that Claire has grown in power, we don't show any of that. We just show her unwilling to let him go. He's dead for a day plus before anything happens there, right? So again, what I said at the beginning of this could have been worse, okay? They at least have him wake up if right before the end, and I get that, because how do you really wrap this show up? We already said all the goodbyes. You know, when we have him come home, we'll have the, like, welcome homes. But, you know, it's a dramatic ending. It's a way to have it end on just Jamie and Claire, which is beautiful. And, you know, to wrap up the comparison part, if we take what happened in this episode and compare it to the book, it's a pretty faithful recitation for where we were at. So I'll give this a rating of actually an 8 out of 10 for accuracy wise. But now I'm going to go into the strings that they left wound up, the hanging strings that we left that bother me the most. But I just want to be clear, I thought this episode did pretty well. It did not go more off the rails that I was afraid it would. I truly feel like episode 7, and I was talking with my friend, messaging her, I feel like they wound us the fuck up to get everybody talking about this going into the last few episodes. And then they kind of went back to regularly scheduled programming in a way. It feels like they were laying seeds for future spin-offs or future things, like leaving questions about other travelers and stuff like that. What was the fucking point in having Fanny the stone crack in her hand? What was the point in showing Claire's blue light if we were just going to have her be basically passed out for the magical part? Again, when you read it in the book, it does take days. You know, but Roger and Ian are there, and it's also clear that she is healing him. She does actual doctoring first, and then when that doesn't work, she is like, fuck logic, I'm going outside myself, I'm giving into this, whatever will save the man I love, and we see it. And instead we went on the journey with Jamie, which, you know what, again, I'm not mad at. We get the answer to our ghost, in my opinion. I don't think that's that far off of how Jamie's ghost is there, right? Diana may have a different way of showing it or a cleverer way of showing it. I don't know. But I've always thought that one of the times Jamie is near death, that he would go there. I've always thought that. And I think it makes sense for him to be at the closest point to death that he is, that he goes there. Because there are times in dreams where Jamie accurately recounts how things in the future look. He'll have dreams of his grandchildren. He even has like a dream about Claire once where she's like watching or like playing with a radio or whatever that she's doing. He's able to describe things that Claire's never told him about. So there's already that bit. So I think it makes sense that when he's near death, you know, he's not able to travel through the stones, but if the space between, as a lot of people think, is this plane of where you can go wherever, the stones just do it in a different way. Or I'm not the stones. We talked about this a bit. The ley lines just do it in a different way. When him and Claire are that deeply connected, what if he's able to kind of ride through that space between while they're in that state of like their healing slumber in a way, right? Where she's given over and is pouring so much of herself in, and they have melded in a way. He's revisiting all these things. And I think that makes sense. I just don't love how we show that. But that's all right. That's all right. They've done other things that bother me more than that. I just don't understand why we showed her being able to do special healings and know all these things and then have her be sleeping when she heals him. Like that is interesting to me. The other things, you know, we never do get another, we don't know what Marcelly ended up doing. We don't know, you know, I guess they did wrap up John and William. That is the last we saw them for now. We didn't really have like anything more with anyone else. It's just so frustrating. Like there's so much. And right now my brain just can't think of everything. But the thing that still just rides me the most is how things were bumbled with Marcelly. Why do we say she was going to accept that if we never saw her? again, you know, why did she say she was going to do something against Fergus's will, like his wishes, if we don't even do it? Why did we kill Fergus to then have it not mean anything? You know, that really frustrates me that he doesn't make it to the end of the show when we didn't do anything with that, right? Like, if you were going to kill him off, to have that dramatic end, to then have her accept this gift or this inheritance, but then Percy kills himself 2 episodes later, and then the clip we get of Marcelly literally could have been taken at any time because it's just her spinning. Why did we kill Fergus if we didn't do anything with that besides to break our hearts? Like, really, show me what the logical reasoning was. There wasn't any. We dropped it. And pretty much universally, all of you in my comments, I know, agree with me. We just dropped it. I don't understand. Yeah, why did we have Fanny be confirmed the way she was? There has to be something going to go on with Blood of My Blood is all I can think. Mix that with Claire referencing, I wonder if my parents ever checked in on me. Based on Fanny, we know that she can travel. Also, they really teased us by showing a clip from season 2, which is crazy to me. I was sure they were going to do more stuff with that. So it was all just like, why do we spend time on those things when they feel dropped? If not for that they be used in Blood of My Blood later. That's like all I can think is that they'll do something with that. So yeah, I don't want to rant too much longer. Those were the biggest things that bugged me that didn't get done. So that's why I wanted to mention those. But overall, I thought this was beautiful. Like I said, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 for accuracy and for how I felt. I think that I will rewatch this final episode soon. And now that I know what it's going to do, I know that he'll wake up at the end. I can just appreciate what they were going on. And you know, Jamie is the type of man that he lives with no regrets or wants to live with no regrets. And the fact that we had him make up with John, he's in a good place with his son. He's seen all of his family, has people to look out for them or people who will take care of them. And so he's a man now with like, you know, he has everything to lose, but nothing he regrets if he were to die. And the answer to it, I don't think Frank was deceiving him or trying to trick him with this book. Now that we know, he was just accurately sharing history. And technically there was a man named James Fraser who died on King's Mountain. His wife just brought him back at the end. And that is kind of beautiful in a way. Like I said, love that we got to see Tobias Menzies again. Love the other people we saw in the clips. I don't even care if it was a reused clip. To me, it feels like we started this with these 3 and we ended it with them. And I thought that was beautiful. And when I look at Outlander as a whole, that's going to have to be a different video. Like I said, I had a lot of you say you would like there to be a recap show or like a decompressing show. And I would love to do that. I'll pull up my big girl pants and I need to reach out to a couple of the other podcasts and see if they'd be interested. It's been many years, but there was a few years back that I did do, was it the end of season 3 or I think it was the end of season 3 that I had my Outlander Purgatory, did a live show with me and some other friends. And maybe we'll try to put something like that together. I don't know. I know they're going to be busy filming their videos and doing everything. So maybe it would have to be a little ways out, but I should do it. I should reach out to, the, Outlander Unhinged podcast as well. 'Cause those ladies are so great, but, I don't know. This was amazing. So like I said, I'm going to wrap this up. I could go on literally for 2 hours about it, but we got through the recap. I've said the things that are different the most that like bothered me. But overall, I'm telling you, I was so frightened for other things. When that clip scene was coming in at the very end, I was so afraid of what was going to pop up at the end there until I saw the cover of the book and I was like, oh my God, it's Diana. Like that was beautiful. And yeah, all of that stuff was great. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for making it through this journey with me. Oh my gosh, I love you all so much. I didn't ruin all of my makeup, so that's great. But of course, share your feelings down below. I know we're going to be bittersweet. I know we're going to be sad, all the things. But again, still keep it respectful. We are a happy crew. Okay, let's be kind to each other. And yeah, I love you all so much. And hopefully I'll see you again. Just one more note, like for my channel, please like this video, please subscribe. I do have a full playlist of all my Outlander recaps and all those things if you're ready to go back to the beginning and binge it. And I will be doing recaps and review for the off-campus series, which again, I know that's completely different content than this. You're probably not all interested who are in whatever, but I literally will be filming my first video for that here, and that's going to come up soon shortly. So thank you so much for watching, my friends. I love you all to the moon and back, and I'll see you next time.